So what did it cost to live in New York in the 90s? And how does it compare to today? Were the 90s really cheaper? A New York Times article published in 1994 helps us answer this question by providing prices of 3 apartment buildings in Manhattan, giving us insight into real numbers. The year is 1992. Bill Clinton was challenging incumbent George H.W. Bush for the presidency. Whitney Houston's single, "I Will Always Love You," ended the year on top of the Billboard charts. And Aladdin, Home Alone 2, and Batman Returns were some of the highest grossing films of the year. In New York City at the time, the Windsor Court building on 155 East 31st Street was renting a 1-bedroom apartment for about $1,500 and a 2-bedroom unit for about $2,600. At Normandy Court, at 225 East 95th Street, rents were about $1,400 for a 1-bedroom and $1,800 for a 2-bedroom. On the west side, at 30 Lincoln Plaza, a 1-bedroom was about $1,500 and a 2-bedroom was about $2,300. Outside these 3 buildings, the citywide average in 1992 was $950 for a studio, $1,500 for a 1-bedroom, $2,300 for a 2-bedroom, and $3,600 for a 3-bedroom. But that's in 1992 dollars. So what is that in today's dollars? After adjusting for inflation, spending $1,500 in 1992 would have the same purchasing power as spending about $3,400 in 2025. So would $3,400 get you that same 1-bedroom apartment on East 31st Street? It turns out, that apartment is now renting for over $5,000 a month, a 56% increase. A 2-bedroom currently available is renting for almost $9,000 a month, a 52% increase. And that's factoring in inflation. Again, if these were to cost the same as in the 90s, the 1-bedroom should be priced at $3,400 a month. That Normandy Court 1-bedroom on East 95th Street that was renting at the equivalent of about $3,100 in 1992 is now renting for over $4,000. And that 1-bedroom renting for $3,400 in Lincoln Plaza on the west side is now up to over $5,000 a month, a 64% increase. Instead of looking at those buildings, which look pretty nice, let's look citywide. The average rents across the entire city in 92, in today's dollars, were $2,100 for a studio, $3,300 for a 1-bedroom, $5,000 for a 2-bedroom, and $8,000 for a 3-bedroom. The article discussed rents increasing in the city was the result of more than 40% decline in the number of available apartments between 1990 and 1993. The obvious next question is to see if people are making more in New York today to offset these rent increases. While rents went up, incomes did too. The median household income in New York in 1992 was $31,000 and is now $82,000, according to the latest census. Accounting for inflation, that $31,000 is the equivalent to $69,500 in today's dollars. So the median income has grown in New York by 18%, but the apartment we just looked at grew by 56%. But that's taking the median income for all of New York City and comparing it to the rents in Manhattan. So how have rents and incomes changed in each borough since the 90s? Using census data, I compiled the median household income and median rent in 1990 and in 2023. The data has been adjusted for inflation. In Manhattan specifically, incomes grew by 26%, but rents surged 73%. Rent growth outpaced incomes nearly 3 times. In Brooklyn, incomes rose 21%, but rents rose 52%. So rent growth outpaced incomes by more than double. In Queens, real incomes fell, while rents climbed 37%. In the Bronx, incomes fell more sharply, but rents still increased 25%. And in Staten Island, incomes fell 12%, but rents rose 20%. What about other expenses? What if you wanted to buy a home? If you were in the market for a brand new condo, a new 123-unit condominium building at 2250 Broadway on 81st Street had units selling from $295,000 to $500,000. Adjusting for inflation, that's about $655,000 to $1.1 million. Outside of the condo market, the average sales price for a single-family home in Long Island and Queens was about $390,000. On Staten Island, about $400,000. and in northern New Jersey, also about $400,000. The median single-family home price in New York City is currently double those 1992 figures at $829,000, and that's factoring in inflation. So single-family homes used to cost about 6 times a New Yorker's income in 1992, but by 2025, a single-family home now costs over 10 times a New Yorker's income. This means housing has become nearly twice as expensive relative to income growth. What about entertainment? What was the cost to see a Yankees game in the 90s? At Yankee Stadium, a ticket went for $32, factoring in inflation for good seats. Today, you're spending north of $100 to sit in the 100 section. At Madison Square Garden for a Knicks game, the face value of an Eastern Conference semifinals ticket in 1994 was $25, or $56 after inflation. But the cheapest tickets during their 2025 playoff run were selling for $400. Outside the stadiums, if you were looking for a domestic bear in 92, you could find one for $3 to $4. Today, they sell for $8. How about transportation? The subway fare ended the decade at $1.50 a ride, which translates to $2.69 after inflation. Today's price is only 21 cents more, at $2.90. The average price for a new car in 1990 was about $35,000 in 2025 dollars, and ended the decade at about $35,800. The average price for a new car today is $48,000, over $10,000 more, although only 45% of New Yorkers own a car, compared to the national average of 92%. At the grocery store, in 1995, milk ran you $2.50 a gallon, eggs 92 cents a dozen, bread 89 cents a loaf, and ground beef about $1.50 a pound. Today, a gallon of milk goes for $5.54, eggs $4.19, bread $4.65, and ground beef $6.25 a pound. The prices for things New Yorkers spend the most on, such as housing, food, and transportation, have increased more than wages have, leaving more people unable to save. However, if you were able to come out ahead at the end of each month and invest in the market, your return would be significant. If you were able to save and invested $2.50 a month from January 1990 through 2025 in an S&P 500 index fund, which includes shares of the top 500 companies in the US, you would have over $1 million in your account right now. Now, there was one sector of the economy in the 90s that was more expensive than today, and by a pretty wide margin too: technology. A high-definition TV ran you $5,000 in 1999 dollars. Today, they go for less than $400.
You guys are gonna be amazed.
Whoa!
Dude, look at that. Look at that TV.
Oh, where did you get this one from?
Dude, I bought it, I bought it like a couple days ago at Best Buy.
What are you gonna get this for like $10,000? Man, how much did this cost you?
It was kind of near that price. Well, half of that, about.
A computer, a compact Progenia Desktop 330, cost you $2,700 in 1999, the equivalent of over $4,000. Again, you can get a laptop for less than $400, and the cost of a cell phone has dropped in half, with the Motorola StarTAC costing the equivalent of $2,000 in '96, while the cost of an iPhone 16 today starts at $799, and you can do infinitely more than a 1996 Motorola. In 1998, 36% of Americans owned a cell phone. Today, 98% of Americans own a cell phone. Digital cameras and camcorders ran you over $1,000 in the 90s. Today, they're included in your iPhone, the most popular camera. But the drop in the cost of technology was everywhere, not just New York. So I guess Gen X is right. It was less expensive to live in New York City in the 90s. If you're interested in cities, economics, and planning, subscribe for more videos. And check out the Plan for People t-shirts in my shop below.